All right. Welcome to the Pearl and the Echo podcast. This is our fourth episode. And as always, we would like to start with 3 deep breaths. So whatever you're doing, you can always take 3 deep, nourishing breaths. So let's do that in through the nose and out through the mouth if you like. In through the nose again. And letting it go. And one last time. And let it all go.
Nice.
All right. What quote do you have for me, Jim?
Okay. Thank you, Dori. Let me just jump into that 3 breaths thing. I think it's really nice because sometimes when you get into a conversation with someone and you don't take a breath, you just kind of say what's on the top of your head and you don't kind of really address the situation. I'm sitting here having a conversation with you and it's easy to go, hey, how are you? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. How is everything? Yeah, good. And it's all really superficial instead of the kind of, hold on,
Yeah.
let's take some deep breaths.
Imagine every business meeting starting with 3 deep
Exactly.
breaths. In the corporate world, woo, it would change
Yeah.
so many things,
It
I
would
think.
change so much. It would be amazing. My quote for today is this: "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity." And that comes from Albert Einstein. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And I've chosen this one because it's quite dear to my heart, mainly because I love opportunity. I'm all about the living experience, and life is to be lived, obviously. But essentially, life is a series of experiences. And you do this, then you do that. You go to school, then you go to university, then you do a master's, then you have a job, then, whatever.
Mm,
There is kind of learning to be done along the way. But as long as the learning is enjoyable and fun and not repressive and difficult and
mhm.
harsh and painful like my schooling was when I was a kid in England in the 1980s, no. We're all looking for opportunity and we all want opportunities.
Mhm.
And yet we're not prepared to actually conjure them up or make them
Mm,
happen.
yeah.
And what we all want is that life is kind of nice and wonderful and flowers and rainbows and unicorns and everything's great and marvelous. And I get a nice opportunity as well. And most of the time, that doesn't happen. Most of the time, what happens is something difficult happens and the majority of us go, "Oh, ow, that really hurt. Isn't life horrible? Done."
Yep.
But actually, what if that horrible thing or difficult thing happens? Obviously, you can't always do this. There are really unpleasant things happening in the world
Yeah.
all the time. I get that. But most of the things that we say are suffering generally aren't that bad. And what happens
Mhm.
if something difficult happens and instead of getting sucked into it, like I said before with the 3 breaths, you don't do the 3 breaths, something difficult happens and you just go, "Isn't life awful?"
Mm,
Instead of going, "Okay, hold on. What's this telling me? This could
mm,
be interesting.
mhm.
What's actually happening here," instead of just the me reacting to the painful stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, Dori,
Yeah.
hand over to you. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity.
That's my life right now.
Yeah, tell me.
You're right. The difficulty is not so bad. I was working for a place that had a layoff. 8 or 9 people were laid off. And that's hard, right? Because it's a business decision, but it always feels a little bit personal because, you establish relationships with everyone there. And I think what you're describing is it's the skill to take the pause. And I think there's value, depending on what the difficulty is, there is value in saying, like, yes, this is awful and this sucks, and sitting with that so that you can process that. But if you sit in that for months, years, and sometimes you have to, right? If it's grief and it changes and you change with it. But if you ask yourself early on, what can I learn from this? What is the opportunity here? What can I focus on? I think it will help that the pain of the difficulty to be a little bit more easier to go through, or a little bit more meaningful perhaps to go through. I'm not saying don't cry and eat a bunch of ice cream and watch your favorite movie. Like, do those things, of course. Call me over, I'll do them with you. But it feels much better if you refocus a little bit or use the opportunity to do some of the things that you've been putting off, or to have conversations that you didn't expect to have, or create connections that you would have never created, um, if it weren't for that difficulty, right? If it weren't for that
Mm.
challenge that you're now facing. So it's a good quote, and I'm curious what how this will land for folks, because Albert Einstein, as I was telling you before we hit record, is an incredible genius inventor, but also a problematic individual, right? His personal life was kind of a mess, with his wife. He was kind of a womanizer. And so it's when you sent me the quote this morning, I was like, okay, fine. I like the quote. I don't know about the individual, and we can get into a whole thing of separating the scientist from the artist from the person, because we're all flawed. None of us are
Mm.
perfect. But it was one of those like, "Oh, this is a great message." But I almost was like, maybe I should research another version of this quote and we can talk about that. But I didn't, because I know you love this quote. Have there been times in your life where this has kind of like buoyed you, or like did it helped you come out of a difficult moment in a different way?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There'll be people who listen to this and say, "Yeah, that's all very well, but life is really difficult." A bit like in the last episode we were talking about. It's easy to listen to the podcast and sit there and go, "Well, yeah, it's easy for you guys to say, but my life is in pieces. I don't have time to look for opportunities in the difficult stuff. I don't even have opportunities in the not difficult stuff."
Mhm,
And in hindsight, it's really easy to sit with this quote and go, ah, right, yeah. But when you're actually in that difficult moment, to be able to be conscious enough to go, oh, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe this is telling me something. One needs to be aware. So, really, this isn't talking about opportunities. This is really saying, don't let yourself get eaten alive by all of the stuff and the suffering that's going on in your life.
mhm,
Maybe stop and see it for what it really is. We're all really conditioned to think that bad stuff is bad and good stuff is good, and we want the good stuff and we don't want the bad stuff. We
mm,
want the love, we don't want the hate. I get that. Me personally, for example, I have various examples in my life that have happened to me, but also people in my life who've had real suffering and not seen it and just sat in it for years and years and years and been incredibly unhappy
yeah,
and not being able to go, okay, wait, maybe there's something for me to kind of not learn but see. Maybe I'm kind of being told something here. This is like the perfect business coaching thing ever, isn't it? Everything is falling to pieces around me. Where's the good stuff? Let's find the good stuff in it. We've talked a little bit about toxic positivism, and it's not
mm,
that. It's just being conscious enough to go, oh, okay, right. This is really difficult. Let me not just get sucked into it. Let's kind of step back and go, okay, what is this? What's this kind of asking of me?
yeah. It's a deeper inner work that I know we all have to do it. It can really define you. You were talking about how you struggled in school. For me, I had like a rough childhood, like developmental years, and you can really let that define you through your whole life, and no one will know. I mean, maybe the people closest to you might know that you have like low self-esteem, or you don't think you're good enough, even though you're presenting this external successful podcaster, healer, whatever version of yourself, and we're all doing that. But I'm finding lately what's been really nice is meeting new people, looking for those opportunities, but being ready to receive those opportunities is also something that you have to kind of prepare yourself for, because if you're not ready to receive, you're going to miss them. You're not even going to notice that it's an opportunity. And for me, making new friends lately has been really amazing, because they get to see the skills that I've learned over the last, 10 years, and they see this like amazing Dory, and now I'm starting to ask. I'm almost 40, so I'm like, hey, maybe that person really exists. Like maybe that's just it. Maybe we don't maybe we need to believe in that version of ourselves a little bit more, and then the
Mm.
opportunities will inevitably come, because your whole energy, your whole vibration will just be at a level where people will be like, oh, who's that? I want to talk to her or him or them, and let's see what they have to say, and then you don't know what can happen after that.
Yeah, maybe that Dory that you always kind of thought you wanted to be, you kind of were that anyway. And
Exactly.
yeah, because we're all flawed. Going back to the Einstein thing, we are all flawed, and we are all making it up as we go along. If someone looks at me and they're like, "Oh, well, he's this, and this. I can tell what he's like." But no one knows. No one knows the kind of stuff that I have going on in my life.
Yeah.
Some of it really trivial, some of it not. But so we can look at Einstein and go, "Well, yeah, he was a genius." But then, oh, but hold on a minute. But he was also like really terrible to his wife. And I think it's
And his kids, sorry.
and it's all right. Well, yeah, because I don't know. I don't know the story. But it's so easy in life to define something and say, "This is horrible. Life is punishing me. I'm being punished by life." No,
Mm,
and we define it as a punishment, but it might not be. When we get stuck in defining, everything stays really shallow and basic. But when you allow yourself to refine and refine and like you, so you refine your relationship to Dory, because yeah, you've amassed certain skills over the last 10 years, like you've said, but you're still Dory. But
mm,
that the person who knew you 10 years ago and the person who knows you now, just meets you now, they're like, "Oh
mhm.
wow, Dory's like, she does all this amazing stuff." But I'm just Jim, you're just Dory, you just do the things
Yeah.
you do.
And we're
Yeah.
living with all those past versions of ourselves in
Yeah.
us still, right? Sometimes that's okay. People like to do inner child work, and I think that's super important. But I think what we're getting at here is that nothing is black and white. No person is good or bad. The quote and the person, it's actually perfect, right? Because the quote is telling you that there's opportunity and difficulty. And Einstein, although he created the most popular equation of all time, E equals MC squared, genius, everyone is always talking about him still years later. But in the midst of all that opportunity and greatness is some difficulty in his personal life. So
Yeah.
I'm flipping the quote.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in my current situation, yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult not to have an income, but at the same time, I have people supporting me, creating incredible art that I think is worthy of the gallery space, doing this awesome podcast with you, like tons of opportunity within that difficulty. It took me a while to really seize all of those opportunities, but now I'm like, how much more time do I have? Because I'm really enjoying myself. And
Uh,
so I think it's going to be difficult for folks to really embrace that in a busy modern world. But you've got at least a week to sit with this quote, and maybe if you need to listen to the episode again, listen to it again. I just feel like there's something to be said for slowing down and seeing things for what they really are, and putting things into perspective. Like, is this the most difficult thing that you've experienced in your life so far? Maybe it feels like a yes today. Maybe it will feel like a no tomorrow. You just don't know.
because we love defining stuff, you could stop and go, "Hold on a minute. Is that person really a narcissist? Is it even fair for me to say that? Because I've got narcissist in me. Everyone has got narcissist in them in some way or other, haven't they?"
Yeah.
I always remember a conversation I had with someone once who said to me that it's not all good and bad. There's good stuff in the bad and there's bad stuff in the good. So in the middle of difficulty, there's opportunity, but also in the middle of opportunity, there's difficulty. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily easy.
Hmm.
Just because you've got loads of opportunities or even just one doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's plain sailing. But oh, great, an opportunity. I get a new job. Yeah, you get a new job, but you've got this thing or that thing. You've got to meet new people, or your new boss is really difficult, or whatever the
Hmm.
thing is.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're so polar. We're like good or bad all the time. Or
It's very
uh,
Western thinking.
it is. And we could just go, well, it is what it is, and some stuff is going to hurt, and some stuff's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And I don't need to be so intent on running after the good stuff. Maybe the bad stuff has got some interesting things in it too.
Yeah. I just remembered which quote I would replace this.
Go for it. What is it?
It's a Shakespeare quote, and I'm gonna have to look up which play it was, but the quote is, "Nothing is good or bad, only thinking makes it so."
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
exactly what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, it's perfect. We love this defining of, oh, this is bad, or she's a bad person, or he's a good person, or look at how relationships fall to pieces because of the stuff that goes on in our head. Instead of sitting down with that person and saying, well, actually, listen, I feel really bad about this thing and I shouldn't have said that. And you said a thing that really hurt me. And working our way through things in a kind of non judgmental way. The problem is the judgment, isn't it? And the judgment comes from the mind. And that's where, yeah, that's where it all kind of falls to pieces is your mind decides something. And then we're capable of damaging our own life because our mind is set on one thing really concretely.
Yeah,
Mm,
we hyperfixate.
mm,
Um, Quote is from Hamlet. There's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Yeah, I in those moments, if you get stuck in a feeling, I forget there's research that talks about how long a feeling lasts, and it's not very long. I don't know if it's like 30 seconds or a
yeah.
minute or something like that. But if you get stuck in that feeling again, it can be like a year, it can be months that
Mm,
you get stuck there. And I feel like if we do that, we're almost robbing ourselves of the full experience of that moment
yeah, yeah.
because, hey, you lost your job. Okay, so then, I feel sad about that, let's say. I could wallow in that sadness and just stay there. But, maybe there's also some gratitude there for the experiences that that job gave you, the
Um,
relationships that you formed, which, some might be lifelong, right? If the
yeah.
connection was strong enough. And that will come with time. Again, I'm not saying don't be sad about it, but there's so much more as humans, capable of feeling and experiencing so much more than I think we give ourselves credit for, and that our brains are capable of sometimes. I encourage people to feel not just the first feeling, but the second feeling and the third feeling of a challenge.
Yeah, defining something as a difficulty, well, where's that even coming from? Because what I might say is a difficulty for you might be the best thing you ever had. Might be, oh my God, I've been waiting that on for my whole life. And if it's all about the experiences and the work is to not limit ourselves to the experiences, then even going as far as limiting yourself to the quality of the words you use. Oh, this is horrible. This is really difficult. But if you allow yourself to even just word it differently, automatically your relationship to it changes. If your emotion only lasts for 30 seconds, then the other 5 years that you've been complaining about that thing is just your mind going over it again and again and again and
Mhm.
hitting the trigger, which pulls the emotion, which hits the trigger, which pulls the emotion over and over and over again for years and years. So let's finish on that. Let me just read it one last time. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity, but also in brackets, in the middle of opportunity lies difficulty.
Love it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Dory.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for listening to the Pearl and the Echo podcast with me, Dori Sim, and my co host, Jim Rajan. Thank you to Rebel Mixtape Productions for editing this episode. If you like what you heard, like, subscribe, and share with those in your life that matter most.